How many of you find yourself crashing against the rock of life as you navigate the sea of life?
Yes.
How many of you are sinking and struggling in the water, gasping, and getting mad at the ocean? Now, it can be reasonably assumed that we're going to have thousands and thousands of more experiences in this life. So doesn't it make easy sense, perfect sense, to find out everything we can about the boat itself and about the sea and about sailing conditions, and about the weather? Wouldn't it be the mark of intelligence to say, I'm going to learn all about myself, the boat, and the sea, which is life, in order to avoid the rocks and be able to handle the storms, so that I am stronger than the storm. Now you are not stronger than the storm. The storms are stronger than you. Even a little 10-mile-an-hour wind can upset you, throw you off course, make you clutch the wheel and wonder whether you're going to get through it or not. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about human nature, including our own, and see how well we can improve our navigational skills. And the one thing that does that is wisdom and knowledge, both together. Now, if you're sailing your boat along the ocean and you see a rock jutting up out of it ahead of you, you very wisely conclude that if your boat hits the rock is going to win over the wooden boat. So you avoid the rock and you go sailing merrily on your way for about 100 yards and crash into a rock that's underneath the surface that you didn't see and assumed was not there. And maybe this one wasn't too bad, so you pull it off the rock and go along your way again, and you crash again in an unseen rock beneath the surface of the sea. Well, there it is, the story of our day. Crashing into ourselves, our own thoughts, into conditions. Crashing into experiences we just don't know how to handle them. You don't know whether to go left or right. The point so far then is this. Now, we're talking about other people just now, but we know it applies equally to us. If you see one rock jutting up out of the ocean, it is intelligent, believe me, for you to assume that there are hundreds of other rocks in that ocean and you just can't see them. You're just seeing the one here and the one there, and there's all these other ones that you run into. A person who is reckless, rock one that you can see, you see a reckless person, reckless with his life, you know what that means. He's reckless with his life. You must automatically and rightly assume that that person is also ignorant, rock two. If you know that person is ignorant, you also know that he's foolish, rock three. If he's foolish, you also know he or she is compulsive. Rocks, rocks, rocks. See, when you see a person behaving in a bad way or wrong, and you pick out a certain characteristic in that person, you use handle that boat to avoid all those rocks in that other person, the person you live with, or the 4 billion you live with. You must assume that where there's one weakness, there is another weakness, and another, and another. understand, which you must understand, that the average human being, look, the word love, these things inside him. He doesn't know what to do with himself any more than you do. You don't know what to do with yourself. All you know to do is to do the wrong thing, another rock, which is to cling. Now this is human nature. This is you. This is other people. Navigating through the sea, and many people, thousands of more times during the rest of your life, into circumstances with children, parents, friends. You're going to run into situations where you think that you must help the other person. And confuses you more, that causes you more grief and uncertainty and resentment when you feel that you must help someone, but you don't understand it and you don't want to do it, and if you don't do it, you feel guilty. Now let me tell you a major spiritual psychological law right now. And if you saw this, when you ran into these situations where you didn't know how to handle someone who wanted help, if you could see this, all problems would go, all of them. You'd be able to say no without your T-shirts that say no. It'd be built into you. You know what the word heinous means? This is a grammar class, but H-E-I-N-O-U-S. It looks like it should. That is heinous is something that's terrible, that's horrible, atrocious. It is a heinous crime to prevent that other person from heinous offense against him or her, to put a block in the way of so he can be free of himself and cease to be a dangerous rock in the ocean to himself and to other people. Everything in you is going to rise up and protest against you seeing that. We are so egotistical. We take the place of truth itself. And where truth won't help someone, you will. How's that for conceit? From now on, you will know that it's a crime just as much as robbery or homicide. You will know that it's a crime to help another person when that person should be thrown on his own in order to grow strong, to grow in insight. If he refuses, that has nothing to do with you. Most will. That's not your concern either. Your concern is to have erased your sick vanity, your desire for being a hero. So to erase all that so that you're no to this person for a loan, or to that person for help, or for sympathy, for comfort. Your no is so solid they don't even come to you. If you have people keep coming to you all the time for help, you are asking for that. Your attitude's asking for it. They're coming to you because they either think or hope that you'll say yes and they'll get what they want. And that shows your level. That shows that you want your reward in the here and now, hoping that that reward in time will give you an eternal reward that some angel's looking down and putting a nice gold mark after your name for having helped someone. And I'll tell you, the mark is a black one. That angel looks down and says, look at that stupid man and that stupid woman. That horrible human being preventing another person from growing, from solving, from learning, from preventing him or her from bearing the jolt all alone. Weak people keep other people weak. Vanity-laden people keep other people laden with vanity. Everybody in this world is doing their best to keep everyone else just like they are. And they can't help it. Of course they can't help it. They're just doing what their old mechanical nature compels them to do. We're learning. We're beginning to learn. By having refused help, refused comfort, refused lies, we have learned that that put us into a pretty stormy place. But being in that stormy place all alone, we were forced. We didn't want to, but we were forced to study the boat ourselves. Study the rudder and how the wheel turns and changes and how the wind hits the boat and the waves hit it. We found it a very, very shocking but very enlightening experience to be all alone in the boat and learning how to handle it from ourselves. Now only you, I was speaking of you now, only you can refuse help from the world, and you'd better start tonight. And you also start tonight refusing to give help to the world. Because if you do give help to the world, you're not a Christian, you're not a good man, you're not a philanthropist, you're not a strong, noble, caring, cooperative person at all. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what you are. You're a criminal. You think you're being hard-hearted by not helping people, by refusing to help people. You're being hard-hearted by helping them because you have broken the law. That this lady and that man and that man and that lady all alone have to learn. And who gave you the right to interfere with their growth? Now, I should explain that you don't know that you're doing this in many ways. You may not loan a person money when you shouldn't, but you're giving them your level. You're giving them what you are, and you are giving them your weakness, therefore that is what they get, therefore you have prevented them from growing. Stay away from people. Don't be friendly in the way you now call friendship. Don't be cooperative. This is what the world does. And the bombers from this country and the bombers from that country fly over left out and bomb each other's country. These are people who have not observed and followed the law that you must grow up, you must learn. And instead, they have sat around in their living rooms and watched television where they were lied to and told that they have enemies out there that they must crush. And they fell for it. I want you to take a whole new look at what you and what the world calls helping other people. Here's an enormous valley. Let's call it the Valley of Sorrows. Thousands of people live down this deep valley. Valley of Sorrows, and they're sorrowful. And they're hungry and they're afraid. And they fight each other. And they cry a lot. And they're sick. So the governments of the world and the churches of the world and the individuals and do-good organizations of the world down into the valley, and they see all these suffering people. And they say, we are good people. We belong to a good church, a good government that helps people who are sorrowful. So they get together and they get food together and money together and sympathy together. And they appoint a director to handle all the good things they're going to bring down into the valley to the sorrowful people. And so once a month, 50 or 60 people take all these goods down into the valley and distribute it to the people down there. But this director, who, by the way, gets a fabulous salary, doesn't he? And he gets high retirement benefits, and he's angling for more. This director of sending the relief to the disadvantaged people down in the valley, after a while, let's say a year passes when they give all these handouts to the people suffering down there, he begins to wonder what happened to them, what happened to the helpers, because none of them have ever come back and reported to him as they were required to do. 200 helpers went down the valley, and none of them came back and reported what happened as a result of passing out the food and money and sympathy. But following the rule of his position, which is never disturb your own advantages and benefits by bringing up questionable things. Just let things roll and just hope it goes on until you get your 25 years in and get your pension. He didn't do anything more about it. But one night, a couple of years later, while he was at home, he heard a rap on the door. And he went to the door and opened it. And he, in spite of the man then being in rags and looked as if he'd been in a fight, in spite of that, the director of this relief organization recognized the man as one of the helpers. And so he didn't want to invite him in because of the way he looked, and he looked like he might be mad. But he nevertheless invited him in, told him to sit down, and what's this all about? You were sent out 18 months ago to deliver food and help to the people down in the Valley of Sorrows. Now you show up here suddenly. You finally came back. And the helper said, no, I didn't come back. I escaped. And he told the whole story. You know what those people did? They took the food, and they took the money, and they took the sympathy, and they threw us all in prison. Now, if you ask me why they threw us in prison, it's because they wanted to throw us in prison. They're mad. Those people down in the Valley of Sorrow are insane. They have no goodness about them at all. All they want is to grab something. They have no decency in them whatever. They just want to take, and when they're through taking, they turn on you. Well, to finish that part of the story, the director, of course, hearing this story, it scared him a little bit, but nevertheless, he knew what he had to do, which is to simply do nothing, and to let the insanity continue. Remember the rule. If you want to continue to commit a psychological, mental, spiritual crime, you just go around helping people like that. You go around feeling sorry for people who cry. And you will be a criminal, and you will be punished for it on the spot. The very act of doing a wrong thing is its punishment. The very act of helping someone who should be left all alone. Look, listen see how this sounds. Who should be left all alone to either grow or to sink. Leave them alone. Your mother and your father were all wrong, and you have been paying for it. Oh, what relief to be free of the contradiction of false guilt toward other people. Anyone, no matter how close or how distant they are from you. Where do you suppose we got the idea that we'd been appointed to help the world? And of course, people who do that do get their salaries out of it. They get their benefits. And they have the reward of being able to call themselves a Christian, a good person, or whatever. A lost person can be given the facts. If they choose to reject it, is that of any concern to yours? If the whole world rejects it, what has that to do with you wanting to be a found person? Definition of lostness, a lost person. A lost person is one who refuses to put himself in a position where he could be proven wrong. Go over that one again. A lost person is one who continuously, persistently refuses to put himself in a position where being in that position will prove that he was all wrong. Doesn't that tell you how to find yourself now? Put yourself in a position as much as you can, as painful as it is, and it's pretty painful, pretty hard. What do we care about how hard it is? Where you look and see that you did that foolish thing, you know, your wish to get something, to gain something was so strong, you went asleep, and you went ahead and did that thing, and bang, you crashed into the rock out in the sea, and your boat started to sink. When we do that, are you able yet, right while that boat is crashing into the rock, are you able to start the lesson immediately? Don't wait! If you wait, the lying machine will go into operation, won't it? The defense machine will go into operation. The it's your fault machine will go into operation. The minute it crashes, be a really brave human being and say, there has to be a reason why I crashed, and the reason is me. Look at the simple truth. Simple and so hard to do for us because we're so stubborn and so afraid to let go. If I admit that I made a mistake, that I was loaded with conceit, whatever. If I admit that I didn't know what I was talking about, I'll go through the pain, but after the pain I'll be right. And after I'm right, there's no more pain. There it is. Now it couldn't be any simpler than that. Now you know how to get rid of pain. To admit that you're wrong about something, take little things. Admit that you're wrong about something. Go through the pain to your ego, to the conceit. Go out on the other side of it, and the pain will vanish. Now you're ready for the next one. Here's a zoo, big zoo, divided into two parts. And in one part are what you call the peaceful animals. You know, animals that are naturally integrated within themselves, nice animals, no violence, the deer and the rabbit and the sheep, the dove. And all these animals are in one part of the zoo. And on the other part of the zoo are the fierce animals. We'll call the peaceful animals the right animals, right inwardly. And the fierce animals we'll call the wrong animals, the hyena and the lion and the panther and the weasel. A visitor comes to the zoo, and the zookeeper says, welcome, visitor, I'll show you around. So the visitor is shown around, first of all, to the right animals. And he goes over and he sees the peaceful little sheep grazing and the horses walking around out there. And then he goes over to the peaceful animals have a light little fence around them. That's all they need, just keep them controlled a little. But the fierce animals, the hyenas and the panthers, have a strong steel cage all around them because they're fierce. So they go over to the fierce animal's cage and look at them too, and the visitor looks at the lion, and the lion's just sitting there snoozing, as lions seem to do all the time, snoozing, and the hyena is just standing up looking around a little bit, and the weasel is crouched down in some grass, not doing anything particular. And the visitor says, I don't know why you call these animals fierce and call those peaceful. The peaceful ones are right, and the first ones are wrong. I don't know why you explained to me that this is the way it was. Two types of animals in the zoo. Those seem pretty peaceful to me. You ever known a lion that looked peaceful? Well, you ever known a weasel sitting in the grass? The zookeeper said, look, I'll tell you something. I speak animalese, and I can communicate with both types of animals. And I'm going to prove something to you. And we're proving something now, aren't we? So the zookeeper said to the visitor, come over to the right animals, and I'm going to show you a little experiment. So they went over to the peaceful animals area, and the zookeeper looked at a dove. And the zookeeper said, Dove, you are a low-hearted, black, villainous creature. Made that statement to the dove. And the dove looked at the zookeeper, and they were communicating, because I said he spoke animalese and birdalese. But the dove just looked at the zookeeper without comment, without reaction of any kind. And the zookeeper looked at the deer. And the zookeeper said to the deer, you are villainous, you come from the depths of hell, you're evil. And the deer just looked at the zookeeper calmly and peacefully and acknowledged that the zookeeper had spoke to him and turned away. And he did that to several more of the peaceful animals, and the peaceful animals just turned away. The zookeeper, are you ahead of me? Are you working on it? The zookeeper went over to the fierce animals cage, and he said to the visitor, now watch and see what happens. So the zookeeper yelled out at the lion, you are a black-hearted knave, villainous and evil and cruel and vicious. And the lion leaped up and ran for the zookeeper, crashed into the steel bars, crashed down, had a lion-like headache for a couple days. Zookeeper just said the same thing to the panther. You're a black panther, evil, vicious, cruel. Panther raced for the steel bars, crashed against him. He had a headache too. Suddenly, the weasel came with his teeth flaring. Do teeth flare? The weasel came after him. Crash. And the zookeeper said, now why do you suppose that happened the way it did? Do you see the lesson I'm trying to get? And of course the visitor said, I get the lesson. We get mad when people tell us the truth about ourselves. Right? You call someone a black-hearted knave, and he's not one, what's he going to do? He isn't going to react to it, but if he is one, he's going to get angry. Why do we get angry? Something has been said to us, or some experience comes to us that's matching what we are and has exposed us. Why are there only 60 people here tonight when the whole world says we need help? Because if the world came here tonight, they would be exposed. And they would rush at the gate of the cage and bang themselves against it. And they would get headaches. That belongs to them. It doesn't belong to our life. Exactly opposite. Now look, we're not peaceful animals. We're not doves and innocent sheep. We're wolves and coyotes and hyenas and lions and panthers. Do you really want to spend another day rushing at reality and crashing your head into it and falling stunned to the ground and having a headache? I'll tell you, it's just going to happen every day unless you straighten out. You don't have a choice. That is, you don't have a choice except to get headaches unless you change yourself inwardly. And to get scared, and to get scared of every condition that comes along, because there's nothing in you that can handle it. But you insist that there is. You're so insistent on grabbing a thought, grabbing an idea, instead of resisting the facts that are given to you. Why don't you just say, you know, that zookeeper was right. I'm not a laughing hyena at all. I'm a scowling hyena. At last, I'm beginning to understand the secret of self-transformation, which is to be what I am, because I never have any choice but to be what I am at any moment. If I am what I am, if I am a vicious hyena, and you call me one, that ends the matter right there. I don't do anything with it. That's right. I know I am. You don't have to tell me. I know I am. I'm not going to rush you. I don't feel offended because I see the fact. And when I see that fact, I don't want it to be one anymore. Because it is draining my life away. That fact is killing me, and I don't want to be murdered anymore. I don't want to be part of the conspiracy to take away my life anymore. I would say, as an offhand guess, that if you will go through this experience 10,000 times, the light will begin to dawn. Because there's 10,000 animal characteristics in us. That's why. What is wrong with standing where you are and letting the truth, what you call, assault you endlessly? What's wrong with that? You must think so, because you run away or run toward the gate and assault it. Only a new action by you inwardly can make you new. Any repetition of the old action is going to make a repetition of the pain necessary tomorrow. Spiritual self-destruction is spiritual self-resurrection. If you will die, you will be resurrected. In order to die, you must stay right there and hear all the horrid facts about yourself without resistance. There is your part, and there's truth's part. You do your part, truth will do its part. Now there it is. Look, may I tell you something? I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know that if you will do what I told you to do, that you will change. That you'll see your life, see yourself, see everything in a new way. Because the seeing is new, the nature is new. We're going to cover an astonishing number of topics tonight, which will include many difficulties that we have in our lives. The difficulty of trembling before life. The difficulty of looking out at the world and not knowing how to talk to it, not knowing how to handle it. The difficulty of possessiveness. As you will see as we proceed, we'll cover dozens actually of problems, conflicts that we have, and therefore solve them, because there is a solution to all of them. I'm going to start off with discussing 2 points. The first one being the destructive habit we have of wanting to settle something immediately and get a short-term solution to a difficulty. Now look how much we have involved in that one statement all alone. You have a crisis, someone comes up to you and says something, you run into something that is not clear to you, and immediately you want to supply an answer in order to relieve your anxiety over it. And what always happens is that we give it our answer, my answer, your answer. Now look what I'm talking about. I'm talking about demanding an immediate, short-term solution to the challenge as it comes up. And that's easy. Nothing is easier than finding a prompt, impulsive, compulsive answer. All you have to do is think of a retort to the person who scared you. All you have to do is start thinking of some little plot in your mind by which you can later get back at that person, what is commonly called revenge, getting even. All we have to do for a quick, compulsive answer is to let go of our sense, to let go of our real nature and say, this thing is tormenting me and I'm going to relieve the torment by striking back, by going into tears, by finding a solution that is no solution at all. Now, opposed to that is something that is truly intelligent. Something that shows when you use it that you're beginning to get beyond your own compulsions and mechanical reactions to life, which is an intelligent, slow, and thoughtful, long-range solution to the problem, which is the same thing as saying as a long-range solution to myself, to your mind, to my mind. Here's the difficulty. The challenge comes up from the world, a little embarrassing thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. You know, we have 50 small crises a day compared to the one a month that's large, don't we? And so this crisis comes up during the day, and listen carefully. We dread the uncertainty of not having an answer, a solution, a conclusion. Listen, this is the key thought to this. We dread the uncertainty of not being able to say yes or no. And in our desperation to settle it and get it out of the way, we blast someone. We feel sorry for ourselves. We say, I know more than you do. How idiotic. I or you have just supplied my solution. And if it was a solution, would we have to do it 50 more times the same day? So you see, we don't learn. We learn very slow, do we not? We learn that the solution that we take from our conditioning, from our past, from our false pleasures, we never learn that that solution does nothing but make a repetition of the next false answer. No wonder we shake. No wonder we go around with nervous eyes and nervous psychic systems. Simply because we're doing the wrong thing. Look at that little thought in itself. How many people do you know who will sit down when a crisis comes up and just go real slow and say, now, was the answer that I contemplated, which I held off, was that a right answer or a wrong one? But look, We take the thrill, the quick thrill of a short solution, the flare-up back at a person, we take that as the answer. Now, how can you see what is real as long as you're in love with the false? The flaring emotions have built up such a strong, wrong case that we believe in that instead of in reality. We would rather believe in what is hot than in what is right, what could give us the real answer. So see the problem already? Look, it's important to see the problem, not the solution. If you get the solution, it's going to be real quick, isn't it? One's going to satisfy you for now. People who know nothing of these advanced truths, who come here for a class or two or just one and then leave, did they not supply to themselves an immediate, compulsive, ego-serving solution? And they go out, and now they have to answer life 50 times, 1,000 times each day in the wrong way. We are saying to ourselves, we're tired of wasting our lives. We're tired of wasting our energy. We're tired of losing. See, now look. We now lose because instead of intelligent, long-range thinking, the right time thinking, instead of that, we simply suffer within ourselves, within the home, or in the problem down at work, or simply internally. We suffer in that and never have such a thing as right encouragement, as right beauty, if you want to use that word, all because you have settled for what is right. By my circumstances, I am telling you that you have settled for an immediate, quick answer so that you won't have to work against your own false nature, which is the only problem you have, not that circumstance. You want to blame the circumstance, the condition, the husband, the wife, the lack of money, the fact that you were beaten as a child by mad parents. You want to blame that. That is your solution. How is that for idiocy? Is something else. Long term is when you're able to catch yourself taking that hostile remark, taking that circumstance, taking that condition you're in, and start being intelligent about it. And what it means to be intelligent is a refusal. Have you ever, any of you in this room, ever deliberately tried to refuse to love your pain of feeling trapped? You love your pain of being trapped because that is your life. And somehow, when we get trapped by a condition, we say to ourselves, it is better to be in this self-enclosed situation, quarreling with the spouse, wandering around, never settle down. It is better to be in this condition than to face something unknown. There it is. See, we came right back to it again. You won't sit at home right in the middle of that domestic quarrel. You won't sit at home all by yourself right in the middle of that internal quarrel and just endure the pain. You immediately come up with an answer, and every 10,000 answers is a lie. One of the lies being, someday things will be different. See, you still think that you are apart from your conditions. You know very well, all of you here, you are where you are tonight, seated here internally and externally, because this is the choice you have made. Until you begin to make the choice to change the way you see life, which means to change yourself, I tell you, you're going to stay right where you are, and you're going to get harder, and you're going to get scareder, and nothing will change. Now that's an introduction to something else we're going to go into. We're talking about insecurity. The insecurity that is bred. Did you all of you notice that you changed a little bit? Did you notice that you followed me in that? Did you see that? We're talking about the insecurity that you breed and repeat because you want to close your eyes, and I'm going to use the word, you want to close your eyes and crab about life. Little crabs, big crabs. Right description, right? All right. Now listen carefully to an explanation of the condition. And then we'll go beyond that. We're talking right now, as I said at the beginning, about various things: insecurity, possessiveness, repetitious behavior. Here's a man. He lives down at the beach in a nice little cottage down at the beach. And he lives there alone. And the waves are right down to his bottom of the surf there. And the winds come through. He lives in a nice place, but the waves are right there and the winds are pretty heavy. And for a while, he doesn't notice much. He's just getting acquainted to the place he moves into. But after a while, he begins to notice something. Now, I'm talking about a law of life. And I'm going to interrupt myself from time to time to explain as I go ahead with this illustration. He begins to notice that the waves and the winds automatically bring things to him. The waves bring in driftwood, and they bring in seafood, and he goes down to the surf just a few feet below the cabin there, and he gets pretty shells, beautiful shells. So the waves bring things to him, which he picks up and brings up to his yard. Driftwood's very pretty. And the wind also brings things to him. He knows that some different kind of vegetables are beginning to sprout out in his yard out there because there's been farms up there and the wind brings the vegetable seeds down and they begin to grow out in his yard. All sorts of things come that are useful to him that he can use. And it delights him. He's delighted that something is coming to him. You get delighted when something comes to you? A smile, a compliment, a little money, a little companionship. You get pleased with yourself and with life, do you not? So he was quite pleased with himself that all these things came. But he was a human being. And this human being man said to himself, how nice. I've got all this driftwood coming in, and all the pretty shells, which maybe I can sell or at least enjoy myself. And I have these vegetables growing out in the garden, which nature has provided. They came my way. Events, the wind and the sea, brought these objects to me, and I enjoy them. But as I said, he was a human being. And being a human being, he next thought as follows. He said, however, I don't want to lose these. I want to possess them now, and I want to continue to possess them. So I'd better make some plans to not lose them. Already he's afraid. When you say, I'm going to make plans to not lose something, you're already afraid, aren't you? Already you're suffering. So he said, I'm going to get enough driftwood to build a fence around my property, which he did. Lots of wood came in, and very pretty, and put a big fence all around his property. And then he sat on his porch one day and he said, now I am secure. These things have been brought to me. Now I am safe. And then the storm came along. And the winds came along and knocked down the fence and carried away the vegetables and the seashells and the seafood and all the things that he had stacked up around his yard and took them away. And he was mad, and he was angry, and he was scared, and he shook. And he looked around for someone to blame, but he couldn't see anyone to blame. So what did he do? What you do? He turned to self-hatred. When you don't understand how to behave in a situation, I will guarantee you that you will turn to self-whipping, self-laceration. You will hurt yourself and hate yourself because there's no one else perhaps at the time that you can blast out at. So along came the divorce, Along came the firing from your nice cushy position down there at the factory. Along came the loss of something or someone valuable to you. Along came older years, and you no longer have your youth that you put a fence up around. Well, the man seeing this said to himself, all right, I'm going to regain what I had. I'm going to fight for myself. In the wrong way, of course. So he went and got some more driftwood, and he allowed the time for the vegetable seeds to flow into his yard, wind to bring it to his yards again, to get more seashells. And all the things came into his yard again, and he built it up again. And this time he built up the fence twice as high. And he secured himself twice as much as before. And he shook twice as much as before, and when the wind and the waves and the next storm blew it down, he was even more in despair than he was before. And he screamed to himself, why can't I control life? And went over and over and over again. And each time he drove himself madder and madder and madder. Hated everything and everyone. Because, listen to me. Because he was beginning to see something he didn't want to see. That he didn't have control, for heaven's sakes. Who said he had to have control? I know the answer to this question. Whoever told you that you as an individual with an individual mind and acquired thoughts, who told you you had to control life? Have you ever gone out on a windy day and tried to command the wind to stop? Or gone out and told the waves to not beat like that against the shore? You're doing it with events. Those waves and that wind are the events in your life that come to you. And when they're favorable, you smile and you cheer and you say, now I'm going to feel secure at last. Thank heaven, heaven is on my side at last. Along comes the family blow up and the crisis and the heartache and the pain. The weariness with the fight. Are you understanding now what you're doing wrong? What you're trying to do that can't be done? No, you haven't got it yet, but you're on the track of it now. So the man became what all human beings became, a man who smiled a lot on the outside when something came his way, and then scowled a lot and hated a lot when the storms came and took it away. He couldn't take the come and go of it. Till one day, here's what we're after. One day he was sitting on his porch, bitter and hard and scared. If I'm not the controller of my life, then who am I? Wrong question, just to begin with. Never ask that question. Why can't I control my wife, and why didn't she do what I want her to do? Why is my husband such a brute, which he is? He's a brute because he's a brute. And you married him because you're a brute. Same thing. He was sitting on his porch one day, like we are, in despair. And all of a sudden the wind blew in Nice clean piece of white paper. Coming from anywhere. He didn't know where it came from. Could come from anywhere. And he looked down the piece of paper out in his yard. And he went and picked it up. One side was blank. Looked on the other side, and there were just 2 words on the other side. And he shook his head at the 2 words. He didn't know what they meant. So he carried it back to the porch, and sat down, looked at it again. He wondered where it had come from, who had sent it. But he did sense it was a personal message from him, for him. And he looked at the words, and he finally read them aloud. And the 2 words said, possess nothing. Oh, that is a hard saying. Possess nothing. Well, if you carry that to an extreme, look and see what that means. Possess not even my own life. It said possess nothing. Possess not the seashells that the winds of circumstance brought in. Possess not the driftwood that the sea brought in. Whoever said you have to possess anything? I will tell you here tonight that you don't even possess your own life, and thank God we don't need to. Let's see what happens. The valuable things come into our life through the winds and the sea. The woman comes into our life, and the marriage comes into our life, and the position and the phony respectability. All those things come into our lives, including thousands of thoughts and feelings that seem to give us position and security. They all come into our life, and because no one ever told us any different, we say, now I've got it. That is me. The marriage is me. The good position of $50,000 a year is me. That promise of a better future, that is me. I can hang on to that. There is no one within you or within me or within any other human being on earth who can possess anything. Not even your own life. You don't own your own life. You have never owned it, and any attempt to possess us through intellectual tricks will make you scared and hateful when the wind blows them away again. If you don't own anything, how can you lose anything? How could you lose anything if you never had anything in the first place, which you don't, but you imagine you do and you think you do, and you set up fences around you, your angry little fences of possessiveness? You're scared, aren't you? Would you dare to go out someday and right in the middle of your terror of doing it, tear down the fence? Don't try to hold anything at all. If you do that, I'll tell you what will happen to you. And a marvelous thing will happen to you. What will happen is you live in your cottage, which represents our life, of course, and the waves come up and take something away. You will be aware of it going away, but it won't have any effect on your internal self at all. If something comes to you, what you call good fortune, you won't get elated now. You won't get elated anymore because you see that it has no connection with who you are at all. There is no one there who can acquire or lose anything. I am telling you the truth, a marvelous truth. But you have to dare to do it. When you let go of even a small thing, because you understand it, there will, of course, be a wrenching. It will be the blank space where you'll wonder whether you did the right thing or not. I will tell you, if you ever find yourself in a position where you absolutely do not know what to do next, you are in a right position. The world knows what to do, doesn't it? Bomb the enemy capital. Sign a phony peace treaty. Make a lot of money. Lie, live a lie of a religious lie. The world has the answers, and everyone goes around slaughtering each other. And for every person who uses a gun, there's a million who uses bullets coming from right up here. Are you willing then? Are you willing then to let go of your supposed life in order to find something that can never be touched by events, by people? Well, you know very well who the worst enemy is. You're living with him. You're living with her. There's where the enemy is, because this is where you say to yourself, that good thing that comes my way must be possessed, must be protected at all costs. You're protecting a hoard of counterfeit jewels. They're glass. See, you can't spend them. All you can do is protect them and pay the price of having something that is valueless, that has no lasting meaning to you at all. Now listen. We start where we are. Now we can start where we are tonight. Begin to understand that we don't have to be at the mercy of events anymore, of circumstances anymore. And you understand that you can't rejoice over what you call benefits, because if you do, then you'll be sad when they go away, which they will do, because this is the law. Now you can be above that law by understanding it. Then people will continue to come into your life, and they will leave your life. They will go out of your life, but you will remain untouched by any false attachment to them at all. Now listen. You can learn to talk consciously to all these false ideas that come into you, and you can simply tell them that they are, listen to the word please, that they are useless. That is, trying to hang on to what you have had. That thought is a useless thought. Can you see the difference between something that's useless and useful? It is useful to say that they are useless. Now, I know very well that you only have it mentally so far, that you don't understand it. And I know that you're going to continue to be scared until you understand the mistake. That's what we're doing here. Do you understand that? That we're here to understand the error. And when we understand the error itself, the solution comes all by itself, which is for you to be in a position where you're sitting on the porch of your house. Look, if you're sitting there spiritually secure, and you see the wind blow something into your yard or the waves bring something up, you look at it and you see it as an event, and you're not attached to it. And when the wind and the waves take it away, you see it go away, and you're not attached to it. You are not attached to time changes. Shall I say it? Yes, I'll say it. Your immortal spirit and mind, your immortal spirit is looking out at time and being unaffected by it, because immortality is never affected by time events. You'd better get into this spiritual suspicion that we've been talking about. Spiritual suspicion at the start, that there's something more. There is another way to handle approaching events than the way you are now handling them. And that spiritual suspicion will put you through vast new experiences you've never had before. Or you would vow that if you take down your fence, it will be the end of you, that you'll be desolate. Give up knowing how to rescue yourself. That is your enemy. You know how to rescue yourself. And you plan this and you plan that for protection or for security, and nothing ever changes. There's a spiritual, magical disappearing act, which a few people have attained. And you can be one of those people by causing yourself to disappear. Marvelous magic. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about when you do it. And how your chattering will slow down and stop. And how your anxiety will disappear. You've got something that is above the time of the wind and the waves, something that understands it. And now, listen please, now you can be a person who is pleasant for you to live with. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to live with a pleasant person called yourself instead of the crab? You've been told how. Imagine a speaker standing in front of an audience, and he's giving a talk about spiritual development. And he begins to supply very solid, practical, worthwhile facts and methods for authentic inner transformation. And he goes on for a while. At a certain point, he begins to talk about himself in the right way. That is, he begins to say something as follows. I have a personal history of viciousness. I can look back, he is saying, over my life and see how vicious I have been. And he uses the word vicious. And then he finds other words underneath that particular word, such as I have been utterly selfish and deceitful and hypocritical with other people, utterly concerned only with myself while pretending that I cared for others. I never loved anyone. I never loved my wife or children. I never cared for anyone. And he is saying throughout this first third of his talk, I am very vicious. The audience hears him saying that, and they sit back and listen with interest, kind of biographical about the man. And they kind of like the honesty of it, and they sense that he's telling them the truth about his past life. So he goes on like that for a while. Then, about a third of the way through, he changes things a little bit. And he begins to use the word we. And he emphasizes viciousness and we. He says, we are truly violent people inwardly. We hide it from ourselves, and at the moment of being emotionally, internally violent, we don't see it at all. We are essentially violent people. We. Well, the audience senses a little bit of a change in his approach to them. First, it was just he who was violent and vicious. And now he's including the audience in it. Well, not too bad with the audience. The woman out there and the man over there can nod their head and say, yeah, that's right. I guess we are violent people after all. Look at the people over in those foreign countries, how they're bombing each other, killing each other. Yes, I guess that's right. We are violent, we human beings are. That doesn't disturb him much. In the first place, the violent people they're talking about are on the other side of the world, right? 2/3 of the talk is over. They come to the last third, and the speaker changes the tone again. He begins to say, you. Now he connects the word viciousness and violence with you. And he looks at one of the men, and he looks at one of the ladies, and pauses a little bit. And he goes real slow, and he looks around, and he says, you are vicious. You are violent. You've got so much darkness in you, you don't begin to see any of it. All you do is walk around in your sleep, dreaming that you're nice, dreaming that you're accomplishing things, dreaming that you're on your own side, and you aren't. Any human being, the speaker continues to say, who dreams his way through life is a detestable, violent, vicious human being, and I am talking about you, he says. Well, we've had experience with that sort of thing. Now I'm talking about our group here. We've had experience with that sort of thing. And we know what results it produces. And what it produces is a certain number of people getting up right in the middle of the talk and walking out. They can take the I when the speaker's talking about himself, or the we. But when you start to get close to them, to what they're hiding, they begin to get uncomfortable, resentful, and hateful, and they get up and actually walk out while the speaker is talking, which is rude, which is simply bad manners, which means they're lost. Or they wait till the break and they just don't come back, and they never come back to any other meeting. All right. Here's the point. How do you, I'm talking about you now, not about me or about we. How do you react when the truth gets close to you? Everything depends on what you do when it starts to get close to your violence and your sourness. Look, I'm talking to you now, and your faces. What do you think? Look, you know what an open book is? That's your face, your manner. Even now, I'm looking at you now, and I can read every one of you. Whether you put your eyes down like that or you're looking up at me, there's no way you can hide your interior condition. It shows right here in the front row and in the back row. What do you do? And what do you do when we start talking about you and getting close to what is actually going on inside of you? Can you think of a more important question for you to ask yourself on the spiritual path? Because look, you're getting the truth. You're getting it very, very personally. What happens to you at the moment something comes to you that hits where you're hiding out somewhere? I'll tell you what we're all like. You know the Western story on television, the movie on television where the sheriff rides out into the hills to catch the outlaw. And the outlaw sees the sheriff coming at a distance. And the whole movie, our whole lives, the whole movie is taken up with how the sheriff pursues the outlaw and the little tricks that the outlaw plays to elude the sheriff. Riding in circles, playing all kind of fantastic little tricks to throw him off the trail. Until after 90 minutes of the movie, and maybe years in the actual condition, the outlaw sits down somewhere and he begins to think. He begins to think. And you better begin to think. It just isn't worth running anymore. This is freedom. The physical body is free. Of course the outlaw is free physically. He can go north, east, south, west. He's free, but he isn't. Something is chasing him. Something that is relentless. Something that won't stop till he gets tired of running. And you know what happens next? He finally admits to himself the futility of depending upon his own tricky devices to elude and escape the sheriff. He can't escape, and neither can you. Now, in the story, the outlaw finally sits down and he sees that it's no life at all. So he just sits down by his campfire, and wordlessly, between the two men, the sheriff comes riding down. He has his gun ready, but it isn't drawn, because it's a wordless scene now. And the outlaw looks up at the sheriff on his horse coming into the little campfire there. And the sheriff looks down, and they both understand. And the sheriff puts ropes around his hands, takes him off. But the best is yet to come. This is a true, what I'm telling you is a true story, isn't it? Here's the best part of the true story. The sheriff finally takes the outlaw back into town, and when he gets there, they find out that the governor has pardoned him. You don't know what a pardon is because you won't stop running in order to find it. You don't know, but I am telling you that you are pardoned now. Now, look, I said I know that. You don't know that. This is why you're running. This is why you're playing little tricks. This is why you're depending on your husband to be strong for you, you stupid women. He's not strong at all. You don't understand that the pardon has already been signed. It was signed millions of years ago, to use a time phrase. It was signed back in eternity. So that when you give up to the cosmic sheriff, and he puts you in handcuffs, and you're just worried about what's going to happen to you, aren't you? We have to break the parallel. Of course, the sheriff takes him back. But in our true life parallel that we're talking about, when you stop running, you have admitted that you've run out of your own devices. You find out that you can't change your own nature, that you're an outlaw by nature, and no amount of covering it up, no amount of going around and doing some good little deed while being an outlaw changes your nature at all. It's your nature we're talking about, not your deeds. Because you can, as I said in one of the little booklets there, you can do good while being bad, because you're doing the good for a bad purpose, for a self-serving purpose, to make people think that you're good when you're not, for example. Well, the pardon is signed. It is clear. It is done now, but you have to go through the process. You have to get so tired of running around and eluding and trying, how's this for a stupid and impossible task? You have to stop trying to be smarter than reality. Do you understand that you take your intelligence as being the only intelligence that exists? And this intelligence uses the word elude an awful lot. Elude, hide, evade an awful lot. The reason you don't give up, and don't give up to the cosmic sheriff, is because you're afraid of the punishment that will come to you as a result of being an outlaw. Now, you have to understand something about time and punishment. You are all, I'm talking about you. You are all punished right now for being an outlaw, a spiritual outlaw, because this is what you prefer, because it's the only thing your mind can comprehend. To give up to the cosmic sheriff means that you give up thinking in that way, even thinking that you're an outlaw who does bad. And the collapsing of your own self-reference in calling yourself an outlaw and a bad man or a bad woman, the collapsing of that is the collapsing of thought identification which means the same thing as surrendering to truth to the cosmic sheriff, so that you go back into town with him, a long journey of worry of what's going to happen to you when you finally get in there. And lo and behold, when you get there, because you have done what is right, you have followed the spiritual rule of giving up, you get the reward of that which you didn't know exists and which you can't know exists until you receive it. Now, I know how your minds work. And I know that dimly you understand the process. But taking the action is another thing than surface understanding of what you must do. And what you must do is be willing, remember last night, be willing to endure the uncertainty of what's going to happen to you when you get into town. And I know, and let me tell you something, I know what goes through your mind, what will go through your mind if you do give up to the sheriff and you take that long, long ride back to town. You're afraid it's going to be the end of you and your freedom. And you think of all the dreadful things that are going to happen to you. And for a little bit, you wish that you hadn't given up to the sheriff at all, but that soon vanishes. But I will tell you now, so that if any one of you in this room even gets to this point where you give up to the sheriff, I want you to know that all those fearful thoughts, all that anxiety that you have, is wrong, false, unnecessary, needless, and it is a hoax which your old nature, your outlaw nature, is playing on you in order to torment you further. And I will tell you further that if you go all the way into town, shaking, manacled, see, you understood that freedom out there was not freedom at all. Even though you had freedom of physical body, you weren't free up here. When you go back in there, I'll guarantee you there'll be a piece of paper on the table inside the sheriff's office there, which says that the cosmic governor has pardoned you. Now you're not an outlaw anymore. Now you are not who you used to be. Now you do not think in the ways you used to think, which you thought was so necessary. You now think it's necessary to fight and evade and to find ways to hang on to yourself. Question then. What do you do when the cosmic sheriff starts to close in on you? You know what you've been doing up till now. You've been getting on your horse and riding off in a dozen different directions, thinking that you're fleeing to safety when something inside of you tells you the exact opposite, that you're fleeing into even deeper despair over your life. You see, you don't understand your life. You don't know what you're doing here. You don't understand anything at all. All you know for sure is a lot of things that connect with your phony dreams or your physical self. You know that you're going to have a nice lunch in a little bit from now. That you know, that you can predict accurately. Outside of that, what do you know? Well, you do sense one other thing, which is your desperation in riding around and trying to think of some original little trick to put off the pain of being pursued. You know how to stop being pursued by the sheriff and being in the anxiety over it? Just give up. Now, I've told you how to get over the agony of false freedom. Give up to the sheriff. So you have to do that, don't you? What is the first thing, then, in your life? What is the first thing? As far as your inner spirit is concerned. The first thing in your business might be to promote your product and advertising some other way. Or your business in your yard might be to plant a new rose garden or whatever. What is the first thing in your internal spiritual life? What is the first thing? Do you want it? Do you want it more than you want anything else? You had better check and see what you are placing first. And I'll tell you, as outlaws, you're placing the pleasure of fear above truth.